existing single-family house together with related.
Good evening, everybody. This is a regular meeting of the Planning Board of the Village of Dobbs Ferry. This is September 6th, 2018. We have a slightly edited agenda. We have a couple of items that when we get to them, we'll be continuing on until next time. So first order of business here is the adopting the minutes for the Planning Board meeting of August 2nd. All right. Do we need to vote to open?
Yeah,
All right.
open the public meeting, then we'll move forward.
All right, so all in favor of opening the meeting?
Here.
Thank you. All right, so on to the matter of the minutes. Has everybody reviewed them? Are there any comments?
Nope.
Very good. So I move to accept the minutes as written.
Second.
All in favor? Very good, thank you.
Batting 1,000 happier.
All right. How many?
Keep going, baby, keep going.
All right.
You got
So then item number 2 is 11 Overlook Road. We are going to open this public hearing and then make a continuation. I think the applicant's not quite ready. So I move to open the public hearing for 11 Overlook. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. And move to continue on to the next meeting.
Second?
Second. All in favor? All right, very good. Next one is 84 Maple Street. This is the public hearing for site plan approval for a proposed second-story addition and rear deck. Do we have somebody here to speak on that?
Hi, my name is Ilya Gomach, and homeowner. We presented on this last time. There were a couple additional schematics that were asked for that we put together. Showing that we can present a couple things if you're interested, but
Yeah, I think for the audience watching, if you could present those.
You want to take a motion, open the public hearing, while he's doing
Oh,
it?
thought we did. Okay, so
I don't know if we
I'll
did on
vote
this.
to open the public hearing. Second? All in favor? Very good, thank you. So just to recap, this is a project that is built within the setbacks. By and large, it's on Maple Avenue, which has quite a historic fabric there. And I understand you have a number of zoning board variances.
yes, those were approved maybe the end of last year or this year. Sorry, having trouble accessing the document.
All right, were the, George, were these comments from you all addressed to your satisfaction?
I spoke to the applicant, and they haven't addressed them all, but they're of the nature where they're not major items and they can't be addressed.
You're comfortable with?
Yes.
Thank you.
Looks like whoever drew these lot lines must have gotten hit in the head by a 2x4 or something.
Funniest colors.
No, I mean in reality, not in its perspective.
All right, so I think we're having some technical issues.
Yeah, sorry about that.
All right, so-
I'm happy to talk through the new things that were submitted.
All right, why don't you just talk to me?
Sure. The two things that were asked for last time were a couple, there was one dimension, I think, from the corner of the house to the edge of the property. That has not changed. Sorry, that is not changing with the proposed work, but those dimensions were added, so that's one of the sheets. Yes.
Yep.
On the plans there. And the other thing was just how the lot is situated relative to other lots. I have a few photos that I'm trying to pull up here, but the back lot is pretty private where the actual addition is happening. It's secluded down to the sides. We have trees and a retaining wall on one side.
right, so for those watching, basically the dimensions that were added, the existing condition is basically 2.2 feet from the property line on one side, and most of the new work is 3 feet or more. The rear yard, the rear yard requirement is 25 feet, and this addition is at 18.1 feet. So those are the closest proximities to the neighboring properties.
Okay, we've got something. Looks like some of the grades here are washing out a little bit, but this is just a side view of what's being done. So there's an existing first floor addition, and so there's the addition of a second floor master bedroom and bathroom there, and this deck out the back, and the powder room on the first floor. And then this is where the lot is situated. This is what I noted around the house and its nearest neighbors.
Has this gone to the HRB or not?
Yes, it's past the HRB.
Really? Okay. All right, very good. Any comments from the board? Any comments from the public? All right, so I'm going to move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. So I have a resolution here I'll read. Village of Dobbs Ferry Planning Board Resolution granting site plan approval for the construction of an addition to an existing single-family house together with related site work, 84 Maple. Whereas Desan Davis and Ilya Bomash, owners, have applied for site plan approval to construct an addition and make related site improvements at 84 Maple Street, and denoted on the tax assessment maps as section 3.90, block 51, lot 3, and located in the MDR1 zoning district. And whereas the following plans and documents were submitted as part of the application, there's a list here of roughly 20 documents. Whereas the planning board is familiar with the site and surrounding areas and the proposed improvement plans at the reading of September 6, 2018, held a duly noticed public hearing and all comments were considered. And whereas the planning board has reviewed the staff report prepared by James J. Hahn Engineering dated August 29, 2018 for the subject application. And whereas the proposed improvement to the single-family property is a type 2 action under SECRA and is therefore exempt from further environmental review. Now therefore be it resolved that the planning board of the Village of Dobbs Ferry herein grants site plan approval for the subject application conditioned on the following. All applicable provisions of the village, county, and state regulations shall be met, and site landscape plan shall be provided for review and approval of the village's consulting planner. Prior to the issuance of a building permit, all required site plan and engineering review fees shall be paid, and all items in the village consulting engineer's memo dated August 29, 2018 shall be addressed to his satisfaction. The following language shall be added to the plan. Approved subject to all requirements and conditions of resolution dated September 6, 2018 of the planning board of the Village of Dobbs Ferry, New York. Any change, erasure, modification, or revision to this plan, absent reapproval from the planning board, shall void this approval. Be it further resolved that this resolution shall have an effective date of September 6, 2018. Is there a second? Second. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you very much.
George, when the final version is sent to get signed, can you just put in, I think at the end is a typo on the date?
Correct, I just noted that.
Thank you.
Well,
Right, our next item is 289 Clinton Avenue. Public hearing for reapportionment of existing lot lines to include neighboring properties. So I'm going to open the public hearing, so this will be continued.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. So vote to continue this to the next meeting. Second?
Why it's being, because they're not.
They're not ready, yeah.
Yeah, they're not ready. They asked for an adjournment.
Huh?
Continue.
They
They
asked
asked
for
for
an
continuation.
Huh? Seemed like it was a
Yeah.
done deal, but.
Yeah, right. He's on vacation. Couldn't be here, so that's why he asked for adjournment.
Okay.
Very good. Our next item, item number 5 on the agenda is 189 Northfield Avenue. Public hearing for site plan approval for driveway improvements and new retaining walls.
Is that, can I just ask you one question? The heavy dash line, is that the village right-of-way line?
That's correct, yeah, that's the property line. We did prepare a profile for tonight's meeting that we'll incorporate into the final plans. That's a little hard to see. Just to kind of show you the existing versus the proposed grade. So you can see here, this is an exaggerated scale. The dash is existing, so very steep, over 30% for the first part, and then it flattens out a bit up to the garage. So we're basically kind of moderating the grade along that whole length there. So they'll have less of a flat area up top, but the applicant is aware of that. But it will allow them to actually get to the flat top. In fact, I stopped by the site before the meeting tonight, and I could walk up the driveway, but I was scared to walk down because it was wet. So it was actually worse than I remembered the last time I was at the site. So that's kind of all I have to say. I can answer any more questions that the board might have. Public.
So there's the first comment here from the engineer's report. The driveway profile should be shown, which you've done. Proposed driveway slopes upwards of 50%, which is greater than existing conditions. The maximum preferred slope should not exceed 14%. Obviously, we're well beyond that. Additionally, the proposed driveway eliminates the flat area near the garage, thereby making future backup conditions more challenging. So can you speak to that about it being steeper than?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understood that. Maybe there was a misunderstanding with the plan or something, because this is a profile of the grading which we haven't changed since our last meeting. So you can clearly see how steep the existing grade is, and you can see how we lower it to by about 10%. Yeah, because this is an average of about 22% here compared to 32. So I'm not sure if that was a specific area.
That's exactly, it was a specific area that was a little tighter.
Yeah, it could have, because we made a decision to, this side does get a little bit steeper here, but the pedestrians walk will come down here, and we figured that the far path would basically hug this way, and they can come up for the best grade for the vehicle itself. So, I don't think this is any steeper compared to these very steep grades that we're looking at now. But the overall grade of the driveway is definitely not steeper. It's about 10% less.
And Mr. Chairman, the last part of that is the plateau or the platform.
Right.
That's how you get in and out of the garage, and that's a concern. We're concerned that someone pulling into a garage at an angle, that's pretty steep, that's pretty challenging. And then backing out on something that's pretty steep too. I mean, while there's a section that is, like you've shown in your profile, that's very steep, in the middle, that turning around area is, we're concerned that the car can't really back up, turn around and pull forward again.
One other feature of this plan is there is additional kind of maneuvering space between here and here, because this edge of the driveway at the retaining wall is, provides more area, distance from the garage down to here. If you look at the existing plan, you can see the driveway is up here, down the road. The driveway's gonna be down here, so that we think would help that situation.
I mean, George, that's the trade-off, right? You're trading the flat spot at the top for a lesser slope in the middle, which is the least bad solution, because meeting that 14% grade is not happening.
That's well put, that's exactly it.
And it's not ideal, I will tell you that. Just being reminded of it tonight, I've never seen a steeper driveway in this situation right here, this section right here. It's over 30%. So,
So
and
can I-
it's wet. I don't even think that they struggle to get up here, not even snow, but just wet.
Now, what about the agreement with the village for the structures that are on village property?
Now?
No, going
For the-
forward.
Yeah, we'll have to have one.
Okay, but that hasn't been resolved.
No,
yet.
any approval of this would be subject to the Board of Trustees approving a easement for the homeowner to maintain With agreements, insurance, everything like that. Would be
Okay, thank
needed.
you.
That would be subject to the board of trustees approving it, any site plan approval.
And I suppose the question of not getting to this garage has come up, just parking.
Currently, they were actually parked in the garage tonight, but a lot of times we've seen them park here, but they understand that they will not be parking here. With the current situation, so it'll be too uncomfortable.
I mean, many houses have, you basically park at a lower level than the house, right? So it was built like this, and we're struggling with this, and I just wonder if it makes sense to continue trying to improve a very bad situation, as opposed to biting the bullet and, you know, putting a garage with a deck right at the street level.
Yeah, and I don't think that's possible, you know, the space is great, put a garage at the street level. I don't see that at all.
Do you know for a fact if cars backing out of, at 20, you know, going from 0 to 22, they won't scrape as they come out of the garage?
Yeah, I don't think so, I didn't do an analysis of that. In the profile, and what we could do, it's not really shown in the profile at this scale, but we would have this right out of the garage, you know, not 20% right up to the garage like this. There would be a little bit of a, you know, a taper into it, to avoid that situation, so that's kind of the deal, grading that out.
No, but to Javier's point, I mean, I have a pretty steep driveway myself, and when we repaved it, we actually angled it some because anybody who had a low car was scraping their front bumper when they exited. And trucks, you know, used to rip chunks out of the road. So, you know, how it transitions into the street, I would give that a little study. I know it's negatively gonna affect the slope of the driveway, but if everybody loses part of their bumper every time they go out, it's not
Well,
gonna be great.
that's what's getting improved here, is right now, right off the street, you're at 35%.
So that's probably happening already.
Yeah, so it's, you know, it's close to a 45-degree, you know, angle, it's,
No sports cars, they have to buy SUVs.
right. So I had a minivan, but I didn't go onto the driveway, I stayed on the street. But I probably could have made it without scratching my bumper, but you're absolutely right, it's, I would imagine most vehicles are right now scraping on the way out, because of the steepness and the transition that occurred here.
The existing garage is a two-car garage?
Yes.
It's not gonna park on the driveway anymore. They need at least two spaces.
On the driveway or total?
No, they need two
Yeah.
total, but they're not gonna be able to park on the driveway anymore, so
No, yeah, they're not
the
gonna be
two
able
in
to
the
park.
garage.
We have them, yeah.
They need the two in the garage.
We're just concerned that you're not gonna make the situation worse by making the driveway steeper when you go in. So as much platform as you can get up top, I think that would be helpful. So that, I don't think it's something that should be done in the field. I think it's something that you should really work out on paper a little bit more. How much that platform is coming out of the garage, whether it's,
Yeah, we can add some spot elevations and we can tweak the grading right out of the garage there. You know, right now, one corner's maybe not showing, so we can add some spot elevations and show that more of a transition to the 20%.
You know, to George's point, you're pulling in the garage and you can't see if somebody's
No.
standing in the garage. You can't see over the hood of your car until you're halfway in.
so it's a safety concern at that point.
You need a big mirror ceiling or something.
Yeah, so we will address that, it's efficient, spot elevations up in the garage to show that.
It might be worth drawing a cross-section to scale, not with the exaggerated vertical scale, but just drawing a two-scale section from the street, kind of at an angle up into the garage, and then actually showing a car in these conditions. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to drawing, I know that in your profile, you draw this super exaggerated vertical thing to kind of convey the difference between, because I know it's not gonna show up that much actually at a 1/4 inch scale or whatever. But I think it might be helpful to draw a cross-section at scale from the street up into the garage and show a template, a car template in each of the locations, coming off the street, going into the garage, and somewhere in the middle.
Is that jackhammer for the garage and go lower?
That makes sense.
It should be easy to do. If this is all in AutoCAD, you should be able to cut.
Not easy for me, but
Easy for the person who works for you.
I think the idea, right, is you might need to increase the slope in the middle a little bit to ease the transitions at both ends, if that makes sense.
sure.
What happens, I can understand if something doesn't meet zoning code, you get a variance. If somebody's in a situation where they can't meet some technical requirement like this, this is, you happen to be the project, but I'm just asking the
Good
generic
premise.
question. What if they can't literally meet what our engineering requirement is? What's the equivalent of a variance? Is it just?
Isn't it it's not a strict requirement
No,
to
it's not.
slope, right?
So,
Okay,
you're
so
at-
it's-
You're at an existing condition, so you move towards best engineering practices.
Okay,
So
you just say do the best you can.
You
and then-
do the best you can to make it better. That's all
Okay.
you're dealing with an existing condition.
Right, exactly,
So
yeah.
you're not building a new house, you're not doing anything new, so you're just taking what's existing and
Yeah,
making it
no, I
better.
just didn't know if there was some formal,
If they
like
didn't
the equivalent of a
formally,
variance.
if they didn't formally meet a requirement, they would need to get a variance, but it's not a,
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Once you get into the garage, I assume there are more steps to get into the main level of the house? It's already,
I believe so. Because the front door is, come up these steps here, these stairs, and that's the front door. There.
There's no direct access from the garage to the house?
No, I would imagine it has to be. I haven't seen it, but I would believe that there's an interior entrance there. Smell toilet, basement level.
so the residents' original proposal to you was make this bad situation better. I mean, and they're they're understanding some of our concerns, do you think?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I've had this discussion with them because, when I first looked at grading, I said, you're doing a lot of work here, spending a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it's still not gonna be that great, is basically what I said, and I explained to them, how basically you're taking a very steep slope with a relatively flat upper area, and using that to moderate the slope throughout.
Right.
And so you're not gonna have this flat area. You're just not gonna put a basketball hoop up there or anything
Absolutely.
like that. So the client's aware of the situation.
All right, so I think you've gotten some direction about some additional drawings and so forth. George, do you have any other recommendations? We're basically gonna just do a little more study till next time?
Correct, that's what we would recommend. Just because it's, a couple inches or a foot one way or another makes a huge difference. So, yeah, if you look at, if it doesn't work on paper, then trying to figure it out in the field is gonna be tough. And you probably would do some adjusting then too. So,
Would the board consider a conditional approval as long as the village engineer is happy with the final, fine grading up by the garage?
we don't have a resolution, so
Yeah.
I would go
We
through
can-
one more step in the
We
process.
can close the public hearing, so then it's just a formality for next time. So basically you'll be coming back, and so basically you'd come back and we'd ask George if he's comfortable with the stuff, we'll have a resolution for you. All right, so I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
All in favor?
We can assume that nobody from the public wanted to speak on this, but
Oh.
we should make,
Okay. There's too many here.
yes.
All right, thank you very much. See you next time. All right, our next item is 100 Main Street, continuation of referral from Board of Trustees for site plan review for proposed additions and renovations. So this is a pre-submission conference. Screening structure.
Screening structure, right. So we looked at two different possibilities. One was a green roof. The other was doing a lattice or a trellis, similar to what we have on the side, and having that come out over that area. I have a SketchUp model that I'll show shortly that kind of goes into that. We were trying to be pretty clear at the last meeting that we were not yet talking about any architecture. I know there were concerns expressed in terms of like continuous furnaces, so there are things that can be done to break that down. As a point of reference, there are buildings on Main Street that are the width of these 3 bays right now with one furnace that goes across.
On Main Street,
Right,
is on
This-
Elm Street.
right, visible from Main Street, the Main Street address. So the idea of breaking it down to scale was why we did what we did with not having this be one structure. So, but the idea is that we'll be able to go further with that once we have some idea of where we're headed.
Do you mind, sorry, do you mind recapping the parking requirements and units?
Right, we have 2 concepts laid out. One is for 3 residential units that are duplexes in the new building that's being added. There are 2 residential units in the existing building. So we have a total, the lowest number we would have is a total of 5. The other and those 3 units are larger 2-bedrooms in the proposed new building. The other alternative is that we would do 4 units in the new building with 2 2-bedrooms and 2 1-bedrooms. So that's we know what the needs are in the community. Are we doing a better job with more smaller units, or are we doing a better job with 3 larger units? It does trigger questions about parking. Parking requirements right now are 1 space per unit plus 0.25 spaces per bedroom. So if we have a total of 5 2-bedroom apartments, we need 5 parking spaces for those units, and then we have 10 bedrooms, so we would need 2.5 parking spaces, so it'd be a total of 7.5, which gets rounded up to 8. What you can say. So, that would be the requirement for that. If we go with, a total of 5 units, a total of 6 units, 4 in the new building, 2 in we have 6 units that we need, 6 parking spaces that we need for those. We actually have the same 2.5 that we would need for the, bedrooms, because the number of bedrooms stays the same. So we would end up requiring 9 parking spaces. What we have right now shown on the site plan is,
So, just a second, sorry. Ed, for you had mentioned something about the existing 3 spaces that were there, and I think in Patty's letter, he mentioned something different. So I just wanted to resolve that.
It was my opinion that there were 3 existing spaces which need to remain, and then we need to also add for anything required for the new.
So,
So
that's
I-
not
I'm not
calculation.
arguing anything with that. I mean, if you look at things in a kind of legal way, the people who park there don't have the right to park there. The reason that was paved is for the back building. This is all history on it. The reality is, we need parking, and ignoring those 2 units and saying that they don't factor into it, I don't know that that does us any good. But
How many parking spaces are you allowing for the 2 existing units?
we're doing this, we're meeting, what we're basically doing is saying we need to have a total of 3 parking spaces for the 2 existing units, 1 for each unit, plus 1 because there's 4 bedrooms.
So the count comes out the same?
Well, we've included that in our count.
Correct.
So we've included it as though we were building those today.
Correct.
There's a section in the code that specifically says that you don't have to provide parking for existing units, but we're just kind of ignoring that, because we think, resolving the parking for all the units there is a better road to take. So, we either need 8 spaces or we need 9 spaces. We're showing a total of 7 spaces on site. And then what we would be doing is going to the village, which has 2 choices of what they can do. They don't have to do this, but they could payment in lieu of parking.
Yep.
They could also, we have 6 parking spaces adjacent to the property. And there are provisions in the code that allow you, if the Board of Trustees agrees, to count some of those parking spaces towards what your parking requirement is. So if we had 7, we required 9. You know, they said, maybe they'll do a split, I don't know. Maybe it's one of those King Solomon things, of that half. And require 1 pileup and allow us to use 1 on the street, or maybe they'll require 2 pileups, or, you know, whatever it is, there's a mechanism there for it. One of the reasons that we're thinking it might make more sense for the 2 one-bedrooms is we're finding that one of the things that's gotten very attractive to the one-bedrooms is it's people who are specifically, they're living in downtown, so they don't have to own a car. We're adding zips to Dobbs. So, I think that's the kind of direction that we're gonna be going, which is a good one. You know, less auto-centric if you're living in the downtown. So the idea that we would have 7 spaces, which also is worth, and I'm not disagreeing with anything, but this was something that was changed last April. Before last April, the parking requirements here would be
1 per unit.
5 spaces or 6 spaces, and we have 7. So when we presented this and did all that stuff originally, we were compliant. We now need consideration of the village, but that's something we need to take into consideration, make a recommendation. Maybe you're against it, maybe you're for it. That's not my choice, it's yours. I am gonna get to a next thing though, which suggests fewer parking, which is then gonna lead me to ask a harder question, a better question perhaps, of maybe returning to where we were in 2014, which might be looking at, I mean, you know, we've heard the complaints that people have, and one of the ones that still resonates is people think that it would be good to keep the existing garage structure rehabilitated. Can't be done if we have to have parking. If we had no parking on site, we could do it, but let's get to that first before we talk about it. So what we did is we looked at, you know, we kind of worked those 2 ideas out to cover the parking, one with a green roof, one with a trellis roof, both which would obscure what you're looking at from up here. This also is a little bit misleading. This makes it look like you crowned the architect there. It actually still goes up a way, so when you've got a lot of green planting along the strip, that gives you good screening. So it's not like you're walking right here, looking over the edge into where the cars are. So I don't think that the presence of the cars down below here, even though they could be visible if you went up and looked, I don't think it's a problem, but again, not my decision to make. I think there are lots of ways that this can be made so it's good in terms of design. You know, the idea, yes, it's definitely a Main Street property, which it is, and we're carrying that. We're not trying to make it look like the houses up the street or something like that. What we also looked at was the idea of having only 4 parking spaces. Having 4 parking spaces here with nothing projecting past the edge of the building, so that the building would, you know, this wall of the building would conceal the parking. So it would be 4 interior parking spaces, that rotated the stairs, so we have a very different massing. One of the comments last time was having 3 windows in a front that actually accommodates a staircase, well, I think personally it'd be very nice to walk up the stairs and have windows in the light. You know, I think the concern was it looks like it could be somebody's bedroom, and it's actually just a staircase. I would rather do that myself, but, you know, again, not my call. So this rotates the stairs, it makes a difference in the way that this kind of masses out, which could be towards the concerns, and we intentionally kept this stripped of any cornices, material details. We're showing rectangular windows. I didn't even intend for them to put that these would be double hung in. I think they just did it because it was already there. The idea here is a massing one. One of the things that's nice here is that if this is 4 units, this stair can go to the roof. You could have a usable roof for the people who are living there. And that breaks the massing. It has a very different feel than what the other one did, which, if that is a concern, I think this solves it. This would only have the stair in it. Would have no habitable space in it. So my understanding is that I can have a staircase that goes to a roof that penetrates the sky exposure lane without an issue. But that's for others to decide, not me. For example, 2 Ashford Avenue has a staircase that goes up above the roof, we're required to do that by the state. So when we looked at this idea of having the parking in here, I mean, one of the questions, of course, that begs is what becomes this? And when you walk along, the lots along the aqueduct that don't have a building there, which is probably 2/3 of them have a building, the ones that don't, what that is kind of a backyard that gets stuff. So one of my concerns is, do we do something with this that makes it better? There is a retaining wall here that's original to the aqueduct, so I don't think the solution would be to fill this in and obscure that wall. I think the idea is to open that up, but it might be possible to have that actually be a place that you could go and look at that wall, and maybe it would be landscaped nicely and be almost like a little sitting area or something off the back of the building. So what this triggered in my mind, which I do admit I'm tired, nobody needs to say, oh, we did last night. What we started looking at is if we're down to 4 parking spaces, and there are these concerns about the use of massing and how things work. If we got to a point where we started, which was that there was not parking on this site, at that point, you could look at a whole bunch of different ideas. Steve, at the last meeting, said, you know, there's great examples of buildings in San Francisco that step up this. Well, they don't have the parking on the ground floor. Most of the buildings that actually do that don't have that great quality. One of the-
That was Alan.
I actually,
Oh, wow.
the pictures I sent all had garages
Yeah,
in their front facades.
Okay. Did you send those to me?
No, I sent them to the board,
Okay,
but
well,
I'm happy to
sorry for not
CC you
spending
on
more
that.
time looking at them. Next time, I'll make sure I really pour over them. That could be potentially a solution, but my personal feeling, and again, just really personal, is having 3 curb cuts across here, I think is unfortunate. You know, I would rather have no curb cuts here and have the parking in the lot that's across the street. I feel the same about the building on Cedar Street. I think it's ridiculous to try and put parking in that building. I think it would be much better to just say, parking's not gonna be there, it's gonna be in the lot, people have to walk block. So the idea, but if we go that direction, we don't have parking here, we could talk about things like 3 townhouses facing the street. It could even be a townhouse and these 2 units facing the aqueduct, which would be kind of a nice view for those units. There are a lot of possibilities you could do if you say, we're not going to require to have the parking on site. We could even go one step further, although we would need a lot of collaboration and support from the village, because the existing building is partially on the village's property, partially on the aqueduct's property. So the idea of restoring or renovating that building, if we did not have parking on the site, is something that we could talk about. So if that building, which you can see dotted in here, if that was to remain, and let's say the addition that got built held this line, so that this was, maybe this is a unit, maybe it's something different, maybe it's a workshop, or, you know, Peggy Blizzard has it for our art studio, Jerry has a nice one, so she doesn't need it. But, you know, we go with units in here, attached to that, so we don't have an issue. That would require a special permit, is my understanding, because this would then be an independent structure on the property. We would have 2 structures, but I guess if it's an incidental use or accessory use, it wouldn't be the same problem. But that's for others to decide, not me. So I don't know if that's something that the board is interested in. We are pre-submission conference, we can certainly talk about different things. The problem here is never going to be a massive list, what the detailing is. I think that was a red herring that was used for wanting to stop things for all kinds of other reasons. And so the goal here is to kind of come up with a concept of massive, concept of use that we could move forward with and then deal with some of those other issues. So I guess my real question to the board is, do you guys have any sand for the idea of actually going back to the idea that we do not have parking?
Well, the village has done work on that, and Donna, I mean, you've been leading that charge. And also, the Board of Trustees recently changed the code to encourage more on-site parking, is that correct, than the old code?
Yeah.
So, I mean, is there any stomach, I mean, I know Rob's, has a different opinion on this, but is there any real stomach for reducing the parking requirement in this case?
Having no parking on the site, I think would be a huge issue in that with the issues of parking in the downtown as they are, and the available spaces, you keep talking about the lot across the street, and I know you keep going to putting, a structure there, parking structure, but there is no parking structure there now. So I don't know how many spaces there are times when that lot is full, so to take up those spaces with people parking across the street saying, oh, they can use the lot next door, that lot, we can't reserve spaces for the people in the house. So they may wind up on the street or wherever. So I think there would be an issue with no parking on that site. That's my personal take on it. I can't speak for the rest of the board, but I would think that would be an issue because of the parking issues in the downtown.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the board?
Well, all of your premises are based on a certain number of units. How about reducing the number of units, and then you need fewer parking spaces?
I think it's a mistake. I don't think that's what Dobbs Ferry needs. I think Dobbs Ferry is struggling right now. I don't think we have seen it yet, but I think it's hitting hard, and I think we're going to need to increase our tax base very, very, very quickly, or else there's gonna be a lot more people who decide they can't afford to live here. So, it's no secret, it started out in 2002, identified buildings in the downtown. I made a presentation in this room in 2002 talking about the viability of.
I mean, we're talking about one unit. It's not like
It's
not like
a cumulative thing of assessments and the values of properties. There's also the viability or the issue of if you go with 2 units as an addition, is it going to be something that somebody's gonna actually want to do? Is it a lot of work, you're building 2 units? We started this with 12.
No,
So
it's-
we're down to maybe 6. And we have a big need for both places for people to live and for increased tax base. What we looked at in this room in 2002 was that if we took 30 properties that we had identified in downtown, several of which we have succeeded in getting done, 22, 24, 26, 27, Main Street, 1 Hudson Terrace, 66, 75, those are all having a very, very significant difference in what their assessments are, and they're making a big contribution. We identified 30, and that if we did those 30, we would double the tax base in the downtown. And that if we doubled the tax base in the downtown, we would reduce the tax load on single-family homeowners by 36%.
I mean, that's all good, but we're talking about one unit.
Okay?
It's just not, it's not, I mean, it reduce the amount of parking that you need. I mean, again, it feels like.
We could go a whole different direction with this, and if I get sardonic and cynical and sarcastic, I would say let's reduce it to 2. We reduce it to 2, and that makes it.
Well, if you don't have to get any variances or you meet the
Ask
parking
me
and.
what that would be. Because when I rented out 321 Broadway to 5 students, I got $1,500 more a month than I was getting from the nice family who lived there before. So if I created 2 units here, the village code, of course, maybe you would change the code time. Right now, the code allows 5 persons who are not related to have share of the living space. So if I made 2 apartments here, 5 bedrooms each, you could make this economically viable. And I think there is a strong need for student housing. So if that's something the village thinks is a good idea.
Well, I was just suggesting, suggesting some ways meeting the parking codes
Well, we're
and then reducing the
Well, the
massing.
code does allow for these other
Avenues?
outs,
Right.
for a reason.
Yeah, and if we go with the plan that
There's
we
no
started
parking would
with,
be an issue.
we're
Reduce
needing,
parking
we're needing either 1 or 2 points of consideration. The other properties in town that have been developed, they've done, more of an adjustment than that. So maybe what you're doing is you're answering my question, that even if we could save the existing garage and take that direction and break it down to be a different type of project, the fact that we would be eliminating all the parking at that point would obviate that being of interest.
What do you guys think?
My feeling is that the Board of Trustees set a direction that they wanted more parking, so that we would take that as a lead, that basically they are looking not to have no parking on the space, no on-site parking. I mean, so I think that's pretty clear. You know, in terms of your original premise of moving this back, I think this property has this blessing or curse of being right at the aqueduct. That wall is exposed and you're trying to leave it accessible, which I think is the thing to do. So it's really only the matter of how it is screened. So far, I haven't seen, a screening plan I like.
I forgot all about that, I'm so sorry.
In terms of the massing, I do think that's a critical thing, and I think going higher, I think this, taller thing to get to the roof, to me, is going in the opposite direction of what I would like to see.
Okay,
Um,
that's all.
I think the, hearing what you went through before, getting, we'll say a negative response from the HRB, we're trying to be considerate and not waste, the applicant's time, everybody's time. I think the thing to do at this point is to, give you our opinions, and that you go to the HRB and get their.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm willing to, actually.
Is that a,
I mean, I really don't know how I want to handle that. I mean, if you feel the need for them to help you figure out what you think about it, I guess we would go. If what you're doing is you're trying to streamline the process so that both boards could be looking at this simultaneously, I don't think that's an advantage. I don't think that's real.
Well, there's a third option, that they may want, the board wants that, the planning board wants to recommend that, they want to see if the ARB is in line. If that-
Oh, you're talking about board of trustees?
No, planning board.
Oh, if the planning board, that's what I just said.
Not looking for advice from them, but seeing if they're on the same page, or maybe they have something else that's better.
Or a joint meeting.
What do you know what I mean? To get this, so you're not, so we are streamlining it for you. I think that's the
Joint
purpose.
meetings are encouraged in situations like this
Yeah.
by the code. Not by the board.
Thank you for making this model, by the way.
Well, this is not the model, this is
Oh,
just
okay.
a sketch of thing.
Okay.
Once we have some idea of where we're going with this, we will build a nice 3D actual model. Anybody who's been to my office knows how much I like this. So
So what's that, Chestnut, right? That's the,
This
that's
is
the,
Elm Street.
Elm Street, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, the idea of, I don't know why this would pan back, but it doesn't want to. So the idea of having the, the trellis out the back, I think that does do a lot of stuff. I think, I think it's viable to get something to work with this. I really don't agree that this is Elm Street, not Main Street. I think this is a Main Street property. I think it's very visible from Main Street. I think, one of the things that's nice often when you're walking down the street is the buildings have a depth, and you see that side of a Main Street building. So that was part of what our thinking on this was.
But this has no similarity really to the Main Street building. It's not like you're,
Are you talking about because we showed brick instead of stucco?
no, I'm just saying, whatever you're showing, you haven't shown us anything that really tries to make this one continuous property that
Right,
I'm saying, right?
I was chastised and beaten to a pulp because I did that. And I was told I was trying to make a building that looked too massive and it was too homogeneous and that I should be trying to find ways of breaking it down. This board said that and the board and the architectural review board said that, so I've taken that to heart.
My point is only that you're making it look like what's on Elm belongs on Main. To me, it's, it's sort of contrary.
Contrary because,
This, your model for what you've been talking about, the cornice building and the verticality and so forth, to me, looks like something that belongs on Main, and you're saying, but you see this as one project, so then I don't see, the building that you have currently on Main
not
is
seeing
less.
this as one, seeing a Main Street facade that is on that section between the aqueduct and Main Street, as opposed to trying to make it look more like the houses that are on the other side of the aqueduct.
right,
So the idea here is that from
So,
permitted.
just be clear, I'm not proposing that it look like what's on Main Street. I'm just saying that it seemed where you were going with this was that you see this thing from Main Street, so it should look like it belongs on Main Street. But it's not on Main Street. So,
Okay, maybe I'm not understanding it. I'm saying that when I walk by on Main Street and I look, buildings that go between the Aqueduct and Main Street, I'm looking for a Main Street style building, which this, I can show you 6 buildings that are within half a block that look just like that. So it's not that it looks like the front building, but it's more like the front building and the building next door. The building next door to break down the scale of the massing, which was something when I went back and watched the videos on 78 Main, was what this board heralded as the decision that was made on things like breaking down the scale by having these different forms and all that stuff. So I personally think that this works better than that, but it's trying to do that same thing. It's taking a facade that's 50 feet long and it's, showing it as 3 components. So it's a very intimate scale structure.
I'm just curious, I'm lost again in terms of what the way forward is here. What is it that we,
Well, I think there's a couple of things that we may be ready to say or not. From just hearing your discussion, I think we've taken our guidance from the Board of Trustees that the idea of no parking
is not?
with the
right,
building is
right,
not
so we all
acceptable,
agree
so
on that.
we are going to have parking.
Right.
And the second thing we started to talk about, I think, and that from the standpoint of the aqueduct, the view from the aqueduct must be screened from any parking that would project out from the building and be visible, so that we were very interested in what an attractive type of screening of the cars that project out within that 10-foot setback from the wall, what that could look like, what would be a creative solution to that. And so there's, I don't know if everybody agrees with this, but I think it sounds like we might, we might. So we could say to the applicant that you should work on the assumption you're going to produce the parking, and those spaces that project out are going to be screened, and the type of screening may, I don't think we said this, but I was assuming some vegetation would be included in that type of screening, not just a straight awning, which you're starting to show before, but some sort of plantings that could look attractive from the aqueduct. And we would actually, I think, need views from the aqueduct showing what that would look like if you're standing on the aqueduct toward the back of the building. Let me just finish for a second. That's the only part I think I could digest and say those are directions that the board, if you agree with what I just summarized, could give to the applicant towards site plan. In terms of how we're gonna deal with massing, I'm not clear as to the way to go. In some ways, it's a disadvantage to have 2, 3 different alternates, because it's hard to hone in on, well, let's take this one approach. So I'm hearing different things. I've heard from Rob that 4 units, single, 1-bedroom units might be preferable to 3 duplex. That I'm not sure I got feedback from the rest of the board on whether, one way or the other. I mean, it does affect a bit of the design of the building to whether we do that. The 3 duplexes would line up a lot with what Patty's been showing of 3 sort of buildings as attachments. So I think some discussion could be had over 4 1-bedroom versus 3 2-bedroom. And we may be able to give some guidance if there's a consensus on the board, one direction or the other. And then the massing of it, and whether we had a joint meeting with the AHRB. Our problem is that this thing is old, and there's like, 20 iterations of something on here in terms of building design that's been floating around since 2014 or whenever it was. And to get to that point, I'm not sure, I like joint meetings, and I think it's probably a good idea, but what Patty is producing is not really architectural design. It's more just a massing study. Is that a fair description? So, then what's the AHRB going to do with it? Do we want to direct Patty to take a shot at creating a more fulfilled architectural treatment for the 4 or the 3 unit approach, which, if we don't have a consensus on it, then we have to allow them to proceed with 2 alternates.
I appreciate what you just said, trying to sum it up. I just have 2 kind of qualifying things. One is, I think that, that I agree that clearly the idea is to get as much parking as possible on site, but it doesn't necessarily mean, in my opinion, that for either scheme, he has to get all the way up to the 8 or the 9 on site. We have these other things that we've always had in the code about counting on street or pileups, and I think those should be in play, in my opinion. I'm speaking for myself as a board member. I know not everyone
Just
will,
on that one, Rob, I
will
don't want to go
agree.
beyond, but it looked like a plan exists with 7 spaces.
Yeah.
And there was nothing about 8, and presumably.
He's required to have, no, but I'm saying presumably in the 3-unit scheme, he needs an out for 1 spot in the form of a pileup or on-street, and in the 4 units, he needs 2 of those. But the thing I wanted to clarify was, the massing, the massing scheme, the alternate massing scheme that had this higher tower piece for the stair,
Yep.
that wasn't related, that didn't relate to the number of units, did it? No, so the issue about 3 units and 7 on site plus 1 off, or 4 units plus 7 on site and 2 off, that can be masked either without the high stair tower either way. So in that sense, you could cook it down to basically those 2 schemes. And we can either, because it seems like nobody's going for this, so we have that kind of the previous one you've sort of rendered, seems to be where everybody's going. And so then the question is whether or not we as a board have to come to consensus around the, whether one scheme is we back in to the number of units based on how many parking spaces we can fit on site, which I'm opposed to. The other one is we go for different numbers of units and different numbers of, either the pileup or the on-street thing. So the question is, do we resolve that here and now? Or do we allow the applicant to say the planning board could be comfortable with either one of these alternatives and allow the board of trustees? I mean, I'm not trying to punt. I'm wondering what is the expectation, and what's the best way for us to do our?
Well, as I understand it, though, the AHRB has massing as part of its purview as well.
It is.
So, without any feedback from them, I mean, maybe we have it in history and I'm not remembering it, but without any feedback from them, I don't see how we go any further with this.
No, I think we,
Because they could say, hey, this is just way too big, it's not gonna work at all for us.
Just backing up a little bit on that, Alan, for a second, though, I think we need to get to that discussion, but what Rob just said was a step further than I had said. I'm trying to summarize where we are, but, so, in either scheme, the parking 7 spaces
On
would be
site.
on the site.
Right.
And that would require some relief for either the 4.
Either 1 or 2
or the
spaces,
3.
depending.
And that could be in the form of a pileup or not. And
Or
as
counting
the-
the on-street or
so
whatever.
as the planning board making a recommendation to the board of trustees, it says it would be saying that we think the parking should be provided on site. It should be screened from the aqueduct. There would be 7 spaces, and the additional spaces that might be required to meet the code would be either through a pilot or through
On
a
a
waiver.
sidewalk or
So
both.
they have different tools. Is that sort of a consensus of where the board is?
Well, I'm on board with that.
No.
Yeah, that's where I am too, but I just,
I'd say lose some units and, less
right,
parking
you're not,
demand.
you're in favor of backing into the number of units from the parking
Yeah,
space.
well, getting closer.
We're as close as you can get, right? I mean, we're
Or-
pretty close.
Or the density So there's an option from the Board of Trustees, there's three tools at their hands. One, that they can grant a pilot. Two, they can reduce the density so that there's no need for a pilot or any other thing. Or they can grant a waiver. Those tools then are in their purview in the first place.
Well, Patty, sorry, is it fair to say that you're gonna build to whatever massing and volume, irregardless of the number of units? Obviously, you need to
Right.
design the thing, but.
Yeah, the building can't get smaller.
Correct.
It's
So-
physically
So it's gonna be more or less that mass.
Exactly. So the point is that whether it is, 4 new units or 3 new units or 2 new units, because the board will absolutely not permit anything outside of the on-site parking, is really not gonna be decided by this board. Is that fair to say? So basically.
Well, unless we think there's too much massing. and
But they're looking for a
we wanna reduce the massing.
recommendation.
So
They're looking,
basically-
but they're looking for a recommendation from
Correct.
us.
Well,
So,
Then that gets to where Alan was going, I think. So that recommendation is something that almost at this point, after a public hearing, that the board can make, except we don't really know what the building looks like, we don't know what the appropriate massing is, and that gets to the question of whether a joint meeting from the AHRB should be held, and what would we expect the applicant to produce to have, we have to go beyond the drawings like we had, and I think you've been resisting that, Patty, but I just wanna talk to my board for a minute and get your input on it. I don't know how, I don't know what's fair.
Couldn't we use these drawings? I mean,
They are the kind of things that get shot pretty quick if there isn't some thought as to the architectural treatments
here would be my-
beyond this.
Here would be my thought, is basically we take two, what, the original proposition of getting the HRV read was intended to save you time and to save us time. And so I think what I would expect at, let's say there's a joint meeting, and we take two pretty radically different approaches to this. So one, we'll call it the vertical one, which is similar to the approach you're taking. You're dividing this thing, you're breaking up massing by verticality. I take issue with that, others might not. Or the other is some actual an eve thing, it's a little more residential, it's a little more similar to what's on the other side of Elm Street. And it has, well,
You can't put a pitch roof.
you can put we'll call it an actual mansard. So basically, if there's a
Oh,
flat section in the
sure.
middle of the roof,
Right, if you did a mansard.
but I'm talking about a true mansard, Patty, not an applied mansard. This actually affects the interiors, you're talking about
Right,
dormers.
that's fine. We detailed the mansards that we did as real mansards, they got built differently, not
Okay,
by us.
but I'm not even, so this is actually a slope of whatever it is, 5 on 12, but does not meet at a peak when it gets to 43 degrees, 43 feet, that's it, it stops, and then you have flat roof
43
inside.
feet.
Right now, you're putting a
40-foot
cornice at
parapet.
43 feet.
Angled parapet.
The top of the parapet's
40 foot to the flat roof, he's talking about 3-foot angled
So I can still
parapet.
go up with a parapet to extend that.
So you have an angled parapet, right, so it's going from, we'll say, below the top of the windows, and the windows are treated as dormers, and it goes
Probably
up
near the bottom of the top windows.
near the, lower than the top. The windows are basically in dormer form. So then you.
Right, so your mansard would be running along here, and it would be sloping up to this height, which looks like it's promising at about the right side and cut back. Yeah, my only hesitation into doing that was we got so fried
Right.
for having.
But we're talking
three
about,
buildings.
ultimately, we're talking about to get a direction
Right.
between the two boards, right? So,
And what I think you're talking about is what would be considered a detailed design. So if you said, take this off, I think that's a nice idea, but not necessary. This is basically what you're dealing with. You've got this rectangular box that is what fits on the site and meets the code. So how do you then articulate that so it doesn't look like a rectangular box? And what we've done is we've suggested a bay system so that this looks different than these two, which gets the setback. This sets quite a bit back, so I don't think it's an issue. But you can go from that to the most horizontal and modern of designs. You can go that to a very traditional, 3-story building like we have on Main Street. You can go to that where this becomes a mansard, and that could be, this is how this would look, this is how this would look, this is how this would look. I don't think one of the things that's caused confusion over the last 2 years. When we talked about having co-meetings, and when this board had a co-meeting with the Architectural Review Board back in 2015, the goal was not at that point to expedite us through a process. The goal there was to try and find a way that, since both boards dealt with massing, of it coming together where everyone agreed. We came in, we made presentations, and then there was, at a joint meeting, the joint meeting produced a memo.
Yeah, we
Said,
did.
here's what we want. And that's what we did. We designed what the agreement was by the two boards in the type of massing. I don't think that would be hard to do again, as long as the board, the Architectural Review Board understands that the goal here is to try and find something that gets built, as opposed to some way of preventing something from being built. So if the goal is to find that consensus that between the two boards of a design that they think would be pleasing in its location, I think the idea there is to come to terms with massing. It doesn't need to have exactly what the windows are gonna be, it doesn't have to be exactly what, is this going to be, they might say, we really think this is a spot for this ultra, sleek, clean line, black glass building or something, who knows? So if they say something like that, we can listen and see how we feel about it. But the main thing is to get both boards on the same page with massing. I don't think they have a vote in parking. I think that's you making a recommendation.
I think we've advanced that at this
Right.
meeting, so I think the goal is exactly what you said, but you ultimately need to bring something to the table, and the more options, the better, without, 2 or 3, but,
The more options, the better.
well, 2, obviously.
Because I've heard other people saying that the
I think-
problem is that we're showing too many options.
I'm just saying, I think my suggestion is you have an A and a B, and we get a response, and that'll get us to something, so we'll get a
Well, I
reaction.
think-
Yeah.
If you're going, to follow your thinking, I think you have an A, B, and C. I think you have this as one concept, which is kind of a proportioned vertical component that's similar to what you see on Main Street. The other one would be, maybe you don't have the notch, maybe this is very horizontal, maybe we even go at that point, I don't know if it can work with the parking, I'd have to check, but, can the stair be a thin element that is turned the other way, and have where it feels like there's a thin element and a more, more linear horizontal element. And then, as you laid out, the third could be what happens if you actually do a real mansard on here. And, you've got this bottom line of the trim. If you carry that bottom line of the trim as a band beneath the mansard.
Tony, just to be clear, I'm not saying mansard. I mean, I said mansard, so you get the idea, but that's not what I'm proposing. So,
That's like saying Ford, but the Chevy's the same. So, are you not saying mansard?
no, my point is that it's not a full roof that comes to a peak. It's basically, it's a sloped roof with dormers, except it stops at 43 feet, and then you have a recess, and you're basically using the detail. It goes up, it goes
Right.
down, it has so I don't know if that's gonna pan out. My point is,
Right, okay.
that it's a
I'll-
divergence from this, and I think it's, the idea is it's something that instead of thinking about it, looking at it from Maine, you're looking at it from the aqueduct. What is the right thing to be looking at from the aqueduct?
Can I add to the aqueduct views department? Walking over here, I considered both 66, 68 Main and 78 Main to be fails in terms of views from the aqueduct, in terms of parking. 66, 68, even though you see the parking from the side, it's just blazing light out of there in the evening. So it's like the brightest thing, I think it needs some screening.
Or maybe changing.
Or some kind of screening. And even though 78 Main is 25 feet from the aqueduct, from the back of the building, you can just look right into that parking lot.
Thank you.
Originally there were
First
some
time
holly trees and there were some junky trees there that sort of screened it, so
Right.
I'm very concerned about whatever happens on the aqueduct face of that building, that it's something that we want, and it's.
Right, no, agreed. Lighting is a very, very key thing. I'm not sure that the lighting at 66 is what, I don't even.
Well, we don't even have to talk about it, I just better mention it, but But if it's just a trellis or something on the back of that building, you've got to really think about the evenings and the nighttime. Because
Sure.
the lights.
Always like this, I mean, that's, I think that's key. The other thing I would say, when you're talking about landscaping, and I'm not sure how this has panned out on either of those other two parcels that you purchased, we have, and on the 66, when we were involved in the construction documents, when we were doing that and dealing with this, we talked about, and we approached the Taconic State Parking System. And what we discussed was us taking on the responsibility to make that section be aqueduct because of the ground. So the responsibility would be, you know, keeping it clean, keeping it trimmed, and also augmenting the planting with good planting. There's a lot of growing maples along there, which is about the worst thing you could have, given the construction of the walls of the aqueduct. So that, you know, doing something that gives you that screening isn't trying to fit it in between this property line and the back of this building where the parking is, but could be a really nice treatment along there. We could work with the village's landscape architect and, you know, come up with something that's, you know, truly an improvement with the aesthetics along that strip.
Yeah, the treatment behind the new building, Christina Griffin's building on Broadway, the modernist building it's really good.
Yeah, it is.
It really is successful. I
It's
don't
hard
know.
for me to believe
Mavis
those two
agrees, but.
buildings are the same. Because I think that came out fairly well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are ways of doing that screening. I think the trellis actually is very effective. You know, there's, yes, of course, it's like when, those 2 days a year when the sun lines up with, and the grid, it's like, you know, when you walk by, there'll be that one spot where I can look between them, and I can
Well,
see.
but also you have to consider nighttime and lighting.
Right.
It has to be lit in there, you know, even in the daytime, because it's gonna be dark probably, so.
I believe you have lights that are back here and that are illuminating the area where you're getting out of your car and you're walking. I think it would be ridiculous to put lights over here. It's just not necessary. I don't have lights in my parking area,
Well,
my
just,
house.
you know, it has to be considered, so.
Right. Well, I think the consideration is, let's be very careful where we're putting light fixtures, type of light fixtures and how they're shielded. So that you're not getting, like, you know, we're very concerned about light pollution vertically. Light pollution horizontally is, in my opinion, much worse. You know, somebody says, well, it can't, it's got this shield on it, so it doesn't interrupt the night sky. Yeah, and I can't even see the building because of the glare. So I think, you know, treating that properly is one of the key things here.
Patty, can I try to just like, you know, get us, otherwise we'll talk about night skies forever. You got the issue with the parking on the site in general. The issue of, also with parking, a subsecond is the proximity to the aqueduct. So your position, first of all, I think the board wants to see something that would screen it, right? Whether it's maples or spruces or some sort of trellis.
We'll talk to a landscape architect.
Yeah, those are one of well, the issue for you though, are you saying that that's enclosed if it's a trellis?
No.
Well, doesn't it have to be? Well, we may make that determination. That's an issue number one, but that's something.
That's why we showed you two options. We showed you.
Okay, that's issue number one. Issue number two is the massing of the building, which I think the board indicated some suggestions to you, whether you want to proceed with it, you could proceed with 2 different ones. And they indicated that they would like you to go to the ARB. If you don't want to go, that's up to you also.
I think that I heard, and maybe I'm reading into it, but what I heard was the idea of a joint meeting. And
Potentially.
I think that would be where to start with this.
I wouldn't say that's where to start. I just was thinking that the board here is entitled to see some of their suggestions first. And I think the next meeting hopefully would have more of a rendered, whatever the right word is, architectural treatment, along with the other things that they've requested about the parking, how the parking's gonna be screened, ideas about the screening. Those things should come to this board, and from that October meeting, then it would be appropriate, I think, to say, we're seeing some good stuff here, or not. I mean, I think you all should have some sort of opinion about what's the direction for the massing and the treatment of this building should be, as you're referring to the AHRB. I don't think going in cold with nothing, nobody likes anything so far, it didn't seem.
No, I feel strongly that whatever goes there should step up the hillside, like a million good streets I've seen in my life, and nothing we've seen so far does that.
Well-
And certainly Steve's properties across the street do exactly that. So, you know, that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, it's,
Creating steps in this small building is a synthetic solution. It's not intrinsic to what would make this a better design. It might be a faux solution that would show it like as though it's that, but I don't believe that.
Well, does it have to be a single?
Well, I think the other issue
If
here is,
we don't have parking,
yeah, I think once you've accepted the parking, then you have horizontal lines, shall we say,
right,
at the bottom. So they're all on a common base, so they're not gonna,
Well, like I said, that picture I sent you about San Francisco, every one of those buildings had parking.
how many parking spaces did each building in a 16-foot wide space, how many cars did they fit?
I don't know.
Well,
I-
they
okay.
couldn't fit more than one.
Well, you don't think they could fit two?
No.
On the driveway.
Okay, I mean, one behind the other?
One behind the other would be 6 parking spaces on this site. So you'd be losing 1 parking space. Everybody would be backing out onto Elm Street. One of the concerns that was very carefully considered by this board, neighbors to this were very concerned about the turning radii and how that was working. The idea of, right now, as it works, when people back out is not a great idea. So being able to pull in, back up, and pull out is definitely superior to the idea of trying to make it look more like San Francisco and having 3 curb cuts along the street. I think that if I lived here and was not involved in that, I would think that this board is really well.
Well, all those arguments make sense to me, but boy, I wouldn't want to ever cross the street from that.
A lot of people do. A lot of people on Main Street live across the street from this. Doesn't seem to be a good thing.
all right, so I think you have enough direction, right? You're gonna come back next month.
Well, I don't know, does he?
I mean, I think we still.
What is he gonna come back with?
Well, 2 options, I mean,
Well, potentially 3 subtle differences on a theme of a rectangular box, maybe with the top chamfered in some way by some synthetically introduced roof. And
it's not synthetic. This is authentic.
cutting the angle off this, make it look like it's got a hip roof, so concealing the flat roof behind, maybe. I
So,
don't know.
so you're gonna, so 3 kind of were resolved to this
Yeah.
coarse massing, but you're gonna come back with 3 ways in which you feel like you could manipulate the massing.
That sounds fair. And coming back with the 7 parking spaces, not a reduction of parking spaces. My sense, and I didn't hear really many comments about it, if I'm looking at a trellis option or a green roof option.
I personally, yeah. Well, again, maybe you should present
Well, we have-
both of them slightly more developed. I know, but they're very hard, I mean, they're so abstract, the way you presented them. Maybe you could do a photo, maybe from standing on the aqueduct, take a picture and do a little photo simulation.
I think the other
Of
issue,
what
but
that
what you
might-
see in there that bothers me is that you see that this is a building on sticks. Right, so as you're walking, well, you basically have posts between the parking spaces. So even it's not that you, oh my God, you see cars, it's that you see that there is no foundation to the building, it's hovering on some posts. So,
Well, he has all the, most of it's wall.
exactly, when you come around from the aqueduct, you see that that is.
Cars leaning out from the wall, right?
My point is, what you're screening is not strictly cars. It is that you're trying to conceal that the building is hovering.
Or if it's the scale of those poles, they could theoretically be, how much space do you have?
We have.
If you actually wanted them to be piers,
Yeah,
pier,
we have piers. They're 2-foot diameter, they're not.
they're not lally columns.
Right. And,
well, either way,
I
it
mean,
would
this,
be
just as a
screened.
point of reference, here's,
Part of the
this is not the aqueduct is actually higher than this line. So in this short space between that, you're not looking in and saying, I can see that. You're going by and you're looking down, and you can kind of look at it. If you walk through all the shrubbery and the trees and everything, you get a view of inside. So maybe that's part of what you're asking to see, is show us how the landscaping works, so that when he's not seeing.
Right.
From the aqueduct, yeah. assuming you stay generally on the trail.
So I would say if you could come back with sort of 3 variations of the massing and a more robust presentation on your screening stuff, maybe that could be the end of this.
If you look at Christina Griffin's solution in that building I mentioned, there is a wall that screens the automobiles, and there's plantings in front of it, so it ramps up. I know you go down, yours is ramping down,
Yeah,
but,
you're looking up.
I mean, they're good ideas.
So the wall that you built.
Yeah, I understand.
In fact, we can't do a wall, I don't think you want us to do a wall, that you walk along the aqueduct and you see like a 6-foot-high wall
No.
right into the aqueduct. It's too
No, but you
small.
understand it could be green or, something that,
Right, I think, the idea that what gets built, what gets planted along here is part of that screening. I mean, and I guess showing you the, green roof, I just think that's gonna feel very heavy.
Yeah.
I mean, then you're not seeing the columns. You're looking and you're seeing a planted surface that people in those 2 units can walk out and.
I think a trellis, personally.
Yeah, but I mean, it could be a
It's
vertical
grown
trellis
enough
as well, I mean,
is-
basically,
I mean, you're not
it's something.
pretending.
But here's the back, here's where the trellis is. So you're saying I can do a vertical, trellis down in the ground that's blocking the view of the wall of the aqueduct.
Right behind the wall of the aqueduct, let's say you're suspending planters there, and they're,
I thought one of the goals that was identified back 2 years, 3 years, 4 years ago was if we could expose the wall of the aqueduct and give them permission to restore it,
yes.
that would be a favorable thing. Putting a planting or trellis or anything else along that just doesn't.
No, you're suspending planters right inside it, right within it. Does that make sense?
Not really.
Right. I'll send you a sketch.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about putting something underneath in here, which I did, if you had somebody who was really into it, and this is where they were gonna grow something, I think that'd be nice. I picture walking by that for years, and you've got these boxes that are starting to deteriorate, that have dirt in them, and don't add anything to it. And then yes, you can make rules that it has to be maintained in some way, and this village already has so many of those things that the staff doesn't have time to do the job, so. It's putting those kinds of things on the release and stuff to see what makes sense. I think you want something that's resilient and.
All right, well, we can come back with something. All right, very good. So, I don't think we're
So
gonna,
what are the next steps?
so Patty's gonna come back. We're gonna continue the pre-submission discussion. Continue to next month.
Thank you.
All right, so item number 7, continuation of Board of Trustees referral to review site plan fees. I'd like to see if we can adjourn that to our next meeting, unless there's some.
But we can talk about, I mean,
All right.
what's,
Yeah, we could try and just break it down quickly for you guys. I know we talked about it. There was like 4 projects here that were small projects, additions, and the fees were, no matter what, for a public hearing review, were $1,500 for even a 250 square foot addition.
Plus the 250 pre-submission.
Plus the 250 pre-submission, it was getting to be almost $1,750 for a small addition, just to get the application on. So the thought process was leave the 250 for all pre-submissions, and then have a step down. If it's more than 1,000 square feet, it's the 1,500. And then if it's less than 1,000 but more than 500, it would be 750. And the 500 but greater than 250 would be 500, and 250 would be $250. It would make the smaller projects
right.
have a less of a burden just to get the public hearing fee. We also looked at the re-subdivision. There could be a fee for that too, if you're reapportioning essentially a lot line of $750. You're probably not gonna have a site plan, so it's just gonna be that fee. So it's pretty straightforward, and maybe we can move it along. I mean, there's a,
Yeah, I mean, the building department recommends this new fee schedule,
yes,
correct?
Ed looked at it and recommended, I mean, we could get a motion to,
Well, just hold on one second. Does
Yeah.
anybody have any concerns about what you've seen? Everybody got this, right?
Yeah.
So does anybody have any concerns about this? Is there any reason not to go with the building department's recommendation?
that's all right, I think it's a pretty, we could,
Yeah.
So what do you need from us to move it
We
along?
would need a-
Referral to the Board of Trustees.
to make these amendments as per the September 6, 2018 memo of Ed Manley.
And so this is based, each one is based on area or value?
Correct, area.
There we
And so value, typically that plays into determining building department fees, but you don't think that's an applicable measure here?
No, not for site plan.
Okay.
Site plan is just a flat fee. So the problem was, it's just a flat fee of $1,750. And since the code changes back in '09, we're seeing a lot more things come to the planning board. Anything 10-foot, horizontally, and a lot more coming here with small items that the board is not always waiving. So they are looking at it, you are looking at it, and it doesn't take as much as a full project. So we're grading the fees per area and making it fairer for the applicant.
All right, any comment?
No, I'm just wondering formally, what do we need to do?
Probably need a resolution
All right.
supporting the suggested changes by the building inspector of the fee schedule.
Correct.
Yeah, so I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay.
In favor?
We'll present it to the Board of Trustees. Thank you. Sorry to push that, but it's been,
No,
I thought it was a little more involved.
yeah, no, thank you.
Adjourn?
Adjourn?
Adjourn.
Let's adjourn.
Second.
Second. Thank you.